Creative teams don't usually burn out under bad leadership purely. They burn out under good leadership too. And that's the part that's hard to accept, because the leaders I see this in care deeply. They show up early, they stay late, they want the work to matter and the people to stay healthy. So when a creative team feels tired or distant or flat, burnout doesn't make sense. On paper, everything looks fine. The work is getting done, deadlines are being hit, the team is still producing. But something feels off. Energy is low, conversations are shorter, people feel more careful than curious. I've seen this pattern enough to know it usually isn't about effort or motivation. It's about weight, specifically how leadership's weight gets carried. Because good leaders tend to carry pressure quietly. They hold tension internally, they absorb stress so their team doesn't have to. And it sounds responsible, but pressure doesn't disappear when it's carried alone. It moves. And creative teams feel that movement before anything is said, before feedback is given, before expectations are clarified, before urgency is named. So this video isn't about assigning blame. It's about noticing something most leaders miss and naming it before it costs you your team. One reason this kind of burnout goes unnoticed is because the usual warning signs don't show up right away. People don't quit immediately. They don't miss deadlines. They don't stop delivering. In fact, the opposite often happens. Good creatives compensate. They work a little harder than they used to. They double check their work more often. They think twice before sharing ideas that once came easily. And from the outside, this can look like commitment, but from the inside, it's usually caution. And good leaders miss this because the work still looks good. Projects are finished, standards are met, the output holds together. Nothing is obviously broken, so leadership's attention moves on to the next priority. But burnout doesn't start with failure. It starts with restraint. People stop asking questions they used to ask, they stop pushing back in meetings, they stop offering ideas that feel unfinished or risky or experimental. Not because they don't care, but because they're trying to stay safe. And good leaders often reward this without even realizing it. They praise reliability, they affirm consistency, they trust the people who cause the least friction and need the least clarification. Over time, the team becomes quieter, more efficient, but more cautious, less curious, less expressive, less willing to take creative risks. And that's usually the moment burnout is already at work. Not loud, not dramatic, just subtle enough to miss if you're only watching output instead of paying attention to energy and posture and presence. Pressure rarely moves through direct words. It moves through signals, tone, timing, proximity, and attention. Most leaders don't realize how much they communicate without speaking. For example, when feedback comes faster than usual, creatives feel urgency before it's explained. When edits happen later in the process, they feel disappointment before it's named. And when a leader suddenly gets quieter, people assume something is wrong. Even neutral actions start carrying meaning. A Slack message sent late at night, a longer pause before approval, a question asked twice. None of these are problems on their own, but together they form a pattern. And creatives are pattern readers. They start adjusting before they're asked to. They tighten their work. They anticipate revisions. They play out feedback in their head before it ever arrives. This is how pressure transfers, not because a leader demands more, but because the environment feels heavier. What's tricky is that leaders often think they're being responsible. They're staying involved. They're protecting standards. They're making sure things don't slip. And from their side, nothing feels extreme. From the creative side, everything starts to feel loaded. Every draft feels like a test. Every review feels like it's high stakes. Every decision feels safer if it's smaller. And over time, this creates a low-grade tension that never fully goes away. People are still working, still delivering, still showing up, but they're carrying weight that isn't theirs to carry. And eventually that weight starts to show up as exhaustion, disengagement, or quiet withdrawal. Not because the leader is harsh, but because the pressure was never named, only felt. Most leaders don't control because they lack trust. They control because they care, They want the work to be good. They want people to succeed. They don't want to let something important slip. So they stay close. They join more meetings than they used to. They review more drafts. They offer input earlier and more often. And at first, this feels supportive, but over time, proximity starts to change the dynamic. Creatives stop asking, what do I think is right here? They start asking, what do they want? Not out loud, but internally. Decision-making slows down, confidence erodes, and ideas get safer. The leader hasn't said anything wrong. They haven't raised their voice. They haven't criticized harshly. They're just always there. And constant presence changes behavior. When leaders are always in the room, creatives rarely take risks. When leaders always weigh in, creatives stop trusting their instincts. When leaders always adjust, creatives stop finishing with confidence. Care begins to feel like oversight, and oversight begins to feel like control. From the leader side, it still feels like responsibility, but from the creative side, it feels like being evaluated all the time. This is where burnout accelerates, not because the workload increased, but because ownership decreased. People are still working hard, but they're no longer carrying the work as theirs. They're carrying it carefully, and careful work is exhausting. Not because it takes more effort, but because it takes more emotional energy. That's the quiet cost of proximity when care goes unchecked. When leaders start to sense burnout, their instinct is usually to protect. They step in more, they buffer feedback, they absorb pressure so their team doesn't have to. And that comes from a good place. But protection without clarity often creates more confusion, not less. Because when leaders remove pressure without naming priorities, creatives don't relax. They guess. They wonder what still matters. They wonder what they should focus on. They wonder what will suddenly become important later. Uncertainty is heavier than pressure. Clarity, on the other hand, does something different. It gives weight a shape. When a leader says this matters most right now, anxiety drops. When a leader says this doesn't matter yet, energy returns. And when a leader says this is yours to decide, ownership grows. Creatives don't need fewer expectations. They need clearer ones. They want to know, what does success actually look like? What does good enough mean here? And where do I have freedom? Where are the lines firm? When those things are named, people stop bracing themselves. They stop scanning for hidden signals. They stop replaying conversations. They stop trying to read between the lines. You see, clarity allows creatives to spend their energy creating instead of interpreting. This is why some of the healthiest teams don't feel easy. They feel clear. Clear standards, clear priorities, clear ownership. That kind of clarity doesn't remove responsibility. It distributes it. And when responsibility is shared instead of absorbed by someone, burnout slows down. Not because the work is lighter, but because the weight is finally being carried where it belongs. I want to be clear about something. This is not a problem I have solved. It's a tension I've lived with and one I still notice in myself. I still feel the pull to step in. I still feel discomfort when decisions aren't mine. I still feel responsibility settle on my shoulders faster than it probably should. And that hasn't gone away over the years just because my role has changed here and there. It usually comes from care. I care about the people I work with. I care about the work being good. I care about what's at stake when creative decisions are made. But I've learned that caring doesn't automatically mean I'm carrying things well. Sometimes it means I'm holding pressure too tightly. Sometimes it means I'm staying close when space would actually serve better. Sometimes it means my presence adds weight instead of clarity. And what's helped me isn't a clean solution or a leadership breakthrough. It's awareness. Noticing when I'm stepping in out of anxiety instead of responsibility. Noticing when silence would be more helpful than input. Noticing when trust costs me more than control. And I still get that wrong, often, but naming it sooner changes everything. Conversations get clearer, ownership stays where it belongs, and the work breathes a little more. So if this resonates with you, don't hear it as advice from someone who's figured it out. Hear it as reflection from someone still paying attention. Creative teams don't need leaders who have arrived. They need leaders who are honest about the weight they carry and thoughtful about where they place it. If this has helped you reflect, Share it with someone you lead or someone who leads you. And if you want help learning how to carry creative responsibility with clarity and restraint, that's the work I'm still doing. So thanks for watching.